Okay, perfect. Hello, everybody. This is it. This is the button. This is what Hollywood feared, the culmination of decades of generative AI research. You press this button once and a film is created. In reality, it probably will look a bit more like this, but again, this is the button. And the result is actually really good. It has great picture, has great sound, special effects, some really good twists. That's stuff that James Cameron is too poor to afford, Available in 486 languages, including Proto-Inuit and, of course, Bavarian. Let's just take a moment and pretend this button really exists. And we all have access to it. Like, terms and conditions are super clear. You press the button, the result is your creation. So what now? For some reason, it won't get any tractions in cinemas or on the VOD platforms, even though you spend millions in advertising. So you do what regular filmmakers do. You hand it in for awards and festivals, Golden Globes, Cannes, and you succeed. You are invited. That's fantastic. And at the evening of the ceremony, the jury comes up and explains that this year there have been a staggering 1.6 million applications. Of course, they had to use AI to determine the winner. And the winner is, wait, what? This low-resolution picture of a potato. It reminded the jury of a simpler time, when technology was still exciting and not frightening. MacBooks were made of white plastic. A phone you can flip open. The potato captures this nostalgia. It makes all those other movies feel generic, artificial. Well done. Sales go through the roof. Potato becomes a mega hit, raking in millions. Plot twist, of course, the potato was also made with AI, but not with the big red button. It was crafted by a skilled artist, someone who understood what people were craving. We at Storybook Studios are trying to do exactly that. And, well, my name is Tobias M. I'm a founding member of Storybook Studios, the first film production company that focused on harnessing the power of AI to generate films and TV shows. And we're a sister company of Pantaleon Films, one of the larger German production companies. And we've been producing for Amazon, Netflix, many, many more. And I myself have actually worked as producer on a number of projects. In early 2023, though, I convinced the founder and owner that the changes for the film industry were going to be so significant that we needed to prepare. This is how Storybook Studios was born. We brought our amazing friend Albert Bozesan, who is like an AI influencer and was way ahead in the field of generative AI, on board. And currently we are 5 people, and we're not only creating content with AI, but we're also developing workflows and adapting tools for our specific needs. So this little tale about the potato I just told you, this might be stupid, but I think it's very useful to illustrate a few points. Point 1, AI is leveling the playing field. Every day we're getting closer to making Marvel-style movies on our laptops. So ultimately, we will have something like a red button. Since none of you are representative of large corporations, at least I hope so, this is very good news. One major downside, you will finally be out of excuses to tackle that pet project of yours. So that's going to be one thing. Second, if everything is great, nothing is. If a 16-year-old in Uzbekistan can achieve the same quality as a Hollywood studio, you gotta be creative to reach your audience. In a way, we already had something very similar with smartphones and YouTube. Suddenly, everybody was a creator. AI is an even bigger challenge to stand out from generic bullshit like my example and produce better content. Third, that's my personal opinion, the human factor cannot be replaced. I said better content, but what is better? Every one of you watching this presentation has a different idea about that, more or less overlapping, of course. AI is great to execute most of these ideas if you are creative and if you know what you're doing. And last but not least, the demand for content, also in my opinion, will only rise. I believe there will always be demand for more content that is tailored to smaller and smaller target groups. If you think about it, in Germany, not so many years ago, we basically only had 3 TV channels. So the media landscape was focused on these 3 channels, and if nothing was coming that you wanted to watch, that you had to deal with these 3 channels. So today, we scroll through hundreds and hundreds of films and series on a VOD platform, thinking there's nothing to watch. I actually hope AI will fix that. Then there's a lot of people who are criticizing AI right now. And I understand most of the criticism, and there's definitely things to be figured out. But just to go through a few conceptions that we hear very often when dealing with AI. Using AI is cheating. But you know what else was considered cheating by the artists of the time? Aluminium tubes. They were invented in 1841 by John G. Rand, and it was considered cheating because instead of sitting in your studio having to imagine what the light would look like in certain situations, people were able to go outside with the pre-made tubes in their pockets and actually paint in the very moment where they were. So aluminum tubes basically were a driving factor for the Impressionism that made these amazing paintings possible, where artists were able to capture the real light that was coming from outside instead of having the artificial light from a studio. So technology of its time. Another conception is that AI is putting artists out of business. But I mean, in reality, some of you might remember before Photoshop, people had to actually glue stuff together. So graphic design before the digital era was very much hands-on. And just think of all these skilled glue artists that lost their jobs. No, for real, it's very rare that people actually lose jobs in transformation like that. Most of them upskill or change their profession. And I think the same will happen with the AI. And AI is destroying traditional filmmaking. And that's a very interesting one. In some ways, that actually is the one that got to me a little bit, because I studied film, and as a student working with 35mm film rolls, handling really expensive camera lenses and heavy lamps, I really fancy myself as a traditional filmmaker. So I produced a traditional film only last summer, featuring some of Germany's most famous actors, and it was released in most of Europe in a very traditional distributor. But we had screenings in some of the oldest cinemas in the world. It took me some time to realize that there is no traditional filmmaking. Film is one of the newest art forms out there. Yes, gaming is newer, but traditional filmmaking for me is kind of an oxymoron. Film evolved since its invention. Sound, color, VFX, digital recording, every technological advancement was ultimately embraced by the film industry, abolishing hundreds of jobs, but also creating even more. So you understand it's a paradox that traditional VFX artists are now raging against the next level by they were the ones who put the painters and model makers out of business. Although you could argue that rarely anyone goes out of business. Where do you go when you go out of business? In the 70s, there was a student at my film school that was a passionate model maker, for example. He was really good at making these tiny space stations and spaceships and blowing them up as well. And he was very famous for his moon bases at the time. Unfortunately, none of the directors in Germany at the time shared his vision, so he left and went to Hollywood. His name was Roland Emmerich, and he became like synonymous with CGI battles, explosions, stuff that is very much focused on 5X spectacle. Of course, these days, a lot of these guys go back to the model making, but still, Roland Emmerich was one of the guys who embraced the technology that was available to him, and I think that's what made him really successful at the time. So to anyone who claims that AI will destroy art or entertainment, I say creating reflections of reality and telling stories are two things that always have been part of human culture. Both go back to prehistoric times, actually, and for many anthropologists, these are factors that define the humanity as a race. The way that these stories have been told developed constantly over thousands of years, always adapting, always reflecting the taste and technology of its time. Just think about it. Hey, look, I found out that if I grind this mineral in blood, I can make my handprints on the wall permanent. Amazing, say some of the tribe. That's cheating, say others, who up until then used pure blood, which faded away after a few days. So that's a real technology of its time. People started using minerals, and that's why we have cave paintings today. But because AI is such a buzzword, let's try and define a bit what we're talking about. Generally, AI is nothing new. It's been a part of your recommendations and all kinds of voice assistants for years. Siri was supposed to be the revolution, but I'm pretty sure that many of you got as frustrated as me. Still, AI, specifically the field of machine learning, including pattern recognition, was the basis of success for many of today's tech giants, so Google and Netflix being the most prominent ones. The subset of AI technologies that's interesting for us translates between different languages, not only text and audio, but also images, 3D, vectors, DNA, molecules, don't forget proteins. And in the translation, where information is missing, AI can actually fill the gaps to the point where the output feels new and indistinguishable from the content produced by humans. And that is what is called generative AI. Jensen Huang, who is the CEO of NVIDIA, called in their presentation, I think a year ago, roundabout, he called it the iPhone moment of AI. As you all know, variants of the iPhone have been on the market for years before the iPhone came, but Apple managed to be the first company that put all these technologies together into a product that was truly inspiring. And kind of the same thing happened right now. So generative AI, starting with ChatGPT, was truly inspiring, and now we're spiraling into this whole situation where everything is being questioned. In the past, the realms were separated. Creative thinking was human work, and then we sat down at a computer to execute it. Now the computer is kind of creeping into the field of creativity, and that's frightening a lot of people who define themselves as creative thinkers. I vividly remember that scene from the 2003 film I, Robot, with Will Smith, and he was asking the question, can AI be really creative? And interestingly, at the time, the filmmakers said, no, that's not really a thing, but they still are allowed to live. But generally, this is like the past, because it remains a complex topic, but most scientists agree, yes, generative AI exhibits serious creative capabilities across all fields that don't require a human being to be present, of course. So cooking, not so much, maybe in theory. Be it visual arts, literary arts, design, media arts, architecture, music, sound design, coding, you name it. It's also great at solving everyday problems or giving advice in complex situations. So you could even say there's some kind of emotional creativity involved. Several recent studies, like this one, for example, say, and I quote, ChatGPT can generate ideas much faster and cheaper than students. The ideas are on average of higher quality. More important, the vast majority of the best ideas in the pool sample are generated by ChatGPT and not by the students. I feel a bit bad for those Cornell University students, but I mean, it's science. It's like proven that this is a fact, and this has been done like a year and a half ago. Just wait until ChatGPT 5 comes out, and that's definitely going to change a lot of things again. I would like to show you something now, but I'm not 100% sure if it's going to work out. Josh, you have to give me feedback if it works or not, because I'm really not sure if the video. We tested it before, and there it worked, but right now it's kind of like struggling a bit. So let's see if it works.
Look closely. Nothing you're about to see is real. At Storybook Studios, AI isn't just part of the story, it is the story. We're redefining what it means to be immersed, offering experiences so vivid, you'll question everything.
That's our current showcase. I'm not really sure if that worked out very smoothly, but you can also check it out online if you want to. It's just the showcase where we try to present what's currently possible, and that was already in March this year. But that's enough intro. I want to go hands-on right now and show you some things that how we actually work and what is actually possible right now. Is there any feedback so far? Everybody can hear me? Anything? Like, it's very, very hard to say if there's...
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking about jumping back to Zoom for these things. Anybody have any questions or feedback so far? Just like throw it in the chat.
Okay. If not, you can also throw it in there and I get back to it at some point.
Okay.
Then I try and continue.
All right. Plow through.
Okay. So in filmmaking, our main creative fields are content, image, and sound. And today I will not talk about content. I mean, you all have tried out ChatGPT, I hope. And I believe personally that we will always need writers, but I also believe that ChatGPT and other models, like, for example, the newly released Llama from Meta, are extremely competent writing bodies that conveniently have the entire human knowledge at their fingertips. So for everybody who has been struggling as a writer, like just sitting alone in your room, having someone to like play ping pong, get feedback, or research stuff is extremely valuable. So I think there's going to be writers in the next 10 years, but ChatGPT will always get better and better at supporting these guys. So let's take a quick look at sound. So we're talking voices and sound effects. Let's start with text-to-speech. It basically means that you type something and the AI is creating your voice. The most popular tool, and in our opinion, one of the best tools right now out there, is 11 Labs. And if you haven't tried it out, I'll give you a few examples that are actually really cool. The first example is the Alice voice with a low volatility. That means long texts, it's going to stay fairly consistent, but it's a little boring, a little artificial. You can increase the emotion, but the problem becomes evident in example 2.
Hi, everyone. This voice was created with text-to-speech.
So that was example 1. Could you all hear it? Was that? Okay. And now example 2.
Hi, everyone. This voice was created with text-to-speech.
It sounds definitely more human, and with higher emotion, but you'll get increasingly random voice bits that do not sound like they're coming from the same person. So this makes it very difficult to have a consistent character. So the more human it is, the more volatile it is, and the more difficult it is to have some consistency. There is another option. You can actually not only access the voices that are online already, like the predefined voices, you could also record or basically digitize your own voice. And I already mentioned my colleague and friend Albert, who is a professional voice actor. And he was curious what that sounded like. And it's actually really, really impressive. So normal reading voice for Albert is the first recording. That's actually something that he recorded himself.
Someone finally made a really, really easy way to use Stable Diffusion. It's even easier than Midjourney now.
And now the text-to-speech from Albert.
Someone finally made a really, really easy way to use Stable Diffusion. It's even easier than Midjourney now.
I think that's very impressive. I mean, It's also kind of creepy, but fantastic for phone pranks and, of course, TV series. So digitizing your own voice, there's a whole lot of discussion to be had that I won't get into now. Currently, I'm just focusing on the technical stuff. For us, it's really cool because for a lot of stuff that we're doing, Albert is actually the voice actor because naturally it's the go-to voice that we have readily available. But when I edit stuff, I oftentimes just take the text to speech to see how long it would take roundabout for him to speak that. And only when we finished with the editing, he goes back to the recording process and actually re-records everything. Because obviously, a lot of times the 11 Labs will make mistakes in the pronunciation or even just in the tonality for emphasizing certain words or not. And fairly newly, 11 Labs also introduced something for sound design. It's not great yet, but there's definitely some stuff that you could use. And it just goes to show how fast the AI is developing. So it's a bit of a hit and miss, but some of them we actually put into our series that we're currently working on. So the first two are meows, the second two are alarm sounds. I actually think the last one is kind of creative, so it's kind of fun to play around with it, and I highly recommend for everybody to just try that out. 11 Labs has also a speech-to-speech option, but for speech-to-speech, we actually use Respeecher, which is like an Ukrainian startup that is working on that, and it's currently the only way to have some control over the emotion and also have consistency with speech to speech. So the downside is obvious. You need a real person to voice the character, more human work, but still a huge time saver, because if you have one voice actor, obviously you can generate a lot of different characters. And yeah, this is something, for example, that we created with Respeecher. The first one is my other colleague, fantastic colleague, Franny, who spoke in the original. And we transformed her first into a child and then into a man. So it's the same sound bit that was transferred.
Bitte, Lennox, sei still, sonst bringt Mama dich noch nach Hause zurück.
Bitte, Lennox, sei still, sonst bringt Mama dich noch nach Hause zurück.
Bitte, Lennox, sei still, sonst bringt Mama dich noch nach Hause zurück.
Obviously, it's not perfect. I'm sorry about it. It's German as well, but you just get the idea of what it looks like. And if you want to combine that with actual video, that's something we're currently working on. If Albert is watching, that's not the best example right now, but it's one that I just had readily available. So theoretically, the combination of the Respeecher and with actual video footage will create something that is actually hopefully usable for films. There still needs to be done some touch-ups, but this is what it should look like in the end. Currently, the sound effects and recovering the voices, Suno is
Oh, you totally locked up. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, all right. Start over in Suno.
Okay, we're on Suno, yeah. So the Suno is a really cool tool, and I highly recommend everybody trying it out. This is something that Suno came up with. It's totally AI, 100%.
Sitting here in my room, sunlight spills across my face. Clicking through the slides again, gonna talk about a new space. Future spaces, here we go. Virtual world we get to show. Little squares as our windows, connected voices start to grow. Dreaming on this stream tonight. AI ain't all it will be, right? Present the future in our hands.
I think it's really cool, and I highly recommend you guys checking it out. It's really fun to play. And you can actually get free credits and play around with it. And it totally came up, including the text and the music and everything. So I just put in the prompt, and this is what you get. It's actually crazy. So just to save some time, we already covered now content. We covered image. We covered sound. We did not cover image. And the image is the next part I'm going to talk about now a little bit. So Stable diffusion is something we talk a lot about in the image creation with generative AI. But what is diffusion? Diffusion, the tech behind the image creation, is called latent diffusion and was actually developed here in Munich, where I am right now. Scientists realized that they could force image recognition onto a random noise pattern, and bam, latent diffusion was born. It's probably not really bam because they're serious scientists, but I always like to imagine it as a bam because it's pretty impressive. In February 2022, we saw the first Mid-Journey images, and they were rubbish. But the race was on, and I mean, boy, did it improve quickly. When it comes to tech, humans are hilariously bad at predicting the future, but let's try and interpolate the development. Think about how long it took us to get from February 2022 to here, where we are right now. Now, think about how long usually movies take to develop and finance. And then try and think about for how long as a filmmaker do you still want to work in this field, like in this industry? It's actually crazy. So for us, it's very, very clear there's no way around AI, and it will take over a lot of what we currently think is impossible to take over by a computer. So the science is clear. AI is already better and faster than, well, at least faster than me in coming up with and creating stuff, but so are probably most of you guys. But that does not stop me from creating. No, in comparison to all of us, AI misses and will probably always miss two essential elements in the creation process. A is the motivation to create, the impulse, the need that gets us out of bed in the morning. Like AI per se has no need for art, has no intention to create art. And B, and that's a very important one, is good taste. AI can take a lot of output, can create a lot of output very fast on its own, completely independent. But most of the creations will still be relatively bad or bland or around about the same. So there's always someone needed to decide. I would call it the curator. In the past, it's been a director. The director also doesn't act usually or create the stuff on set, but he has to or she has to decide the output, and he or she just needs good taste. So artists are faced with a problem. They bring the impulse, the idea of what they want, they bring the good taste, but you either get great quality, the stuff when you try Mid-Journey for the first time and just have a very simple prompt, or you have great control, the stuff that you get with complex Comfy workflows. Unfortunately, the more you force the AI to give you exactly what you want, the worse the results will be. And if you as a creative want to fulfill your vision, you have to understand how the tools and the most important tools work. And the most important tool that, weirdly enough, very few people know is called Stable Diffusion. It's open source. It's always a notch more advanced than anything consumer-oriented, and it runs on actually affordable hardware, completely offline. But it's not a red button. To work with it actually feels more a bit like this.
Hit it, Joe!
I'm guessing that was actually now without lag, was it? Like, oh, okay, great. For real now, the user interface actually sucks. This is how a fairly basic workflow looks. So you need to watch a few YouTube tutorials to make sense of the chaos. But I don't have that much time left. So if you want to, you have to come to YouTube and actually watch the tutorials and actually try and get yourself deep into the topic to make some sense of it. And What we do is basically this, but also still a lot of hands-on work with traditional tools. And we're just trying to use the power of AI in every step where it makes sense. So not in every step completely. So we don't press the button or we don't use exclusively AI, but we try and integrate it in our workflows or come up with new workflows that are really AI-based. And the reasons are clear. Currently, the software we're using is open source, so you can actually download the software for free online. At the same time, we are working offline, so everything we do with Stable Diffusion is happening entirely on our own AI farm in Munich. So nothing is shared with an external company. The data is completely safe. And many people think AI is constantly learning in the cloud and taking the stuff that you create. That's completely wrong. And the third thing is extremely customizable. So just because it's free doesn't mean everybody can do what you do. If you put thought into it and build a complex workflow, that's your advantage. Again, AI is leveling the playing field, but how well you play on that field is very much up to you. But what does customizability really mean? We created a trailer that actually uses a lot of these tools that I mentioned, but combines them with like a story that was developed years ago and with a real voice and real music. And it actually was kind of recognized by the media. Forbes wrote about it, and we recently won a really cool competition, like third place, but still pretty epic to be part of this competition. And if it actually works out, I'd like to show it to you. If it doesn't, Josh, you just give me a thumbs down, and then I skip through. So, okay.
At its northern border, Rome's power fades within the ancient forests of Germania. For hundreds of years, the empire sought to dominate my people, but we remained free. After war came peace. We began to trade. The borderlands became a place of safety for people from every corner of our world. But now, a darkness is rising. There have been murders, savage and merciless. People talk of creatures deep within the forest. They whisper of a dark god, a god of death. To save my village and avenge the death of my father, I must uncover the truth. United with my friend, an agent of Rome, I travel to face the demons of my past and to reveal the forces that haunt us in the present.
Yeah, that was a really fun project, and it was from January this year, and it still kind of holds up, I think, and we're still very proud of it. And again, the basis for all of these shots that we had are images, and these images are created with so-called models. So I'll try and explain to you a little bit more about how these images come together. So you have a base model. Base model, in this case, for example, was trained by Stable Diffusion, a corporation that used like a gigantic data set of billions of pictures to create, in the end, a base model that's about 5 to 10 gigabytes. And this base model actually translated all of these pictures into the latent space, which is like a lower dimensional space that makes it so small. And what happened is that these pictures are not there anymore in the model. They are translated into basically another language. And with this model, with this AI model, we can actually access this latent space, and out of the concept that the AI, this neural network, understands, create pictures from it. So everything that the model understands is possible to recreate somehow. It's not a collage. It's like a combination of concepts that the AI understood. The base model itself is very cool, but it's also very stupid. So if you start out with the base model, in this case, like 1.5, and you're trying to prompt a Roman legionary with, in this case, like a Lorica segmentata armor, you're gonna get this, which is like kind of a human, but not really. So what you need is so-called fine-tunes. Fine-tunes are basically done by people that try and create a specific model for a specific look, let's say, for example, but basically going in one direction. Usually the big directions are everything that's cartoonish, animated, and the other direction is cinematic, photographic, so realistic. And in this case, for example, one of our favorite fine-tunes is Juggernaut, which is like a fine-tune that creates cinematic images. So if we use this fine-tune, which is also around 5 gigabytes large, we're gonna get like this picture, which at least is a human being. It resembles a human being, but the armor is still ridiculously wrong, still not a Roman soldier. So what we need then is so-called low-ranking models. And the amazing thing with the low-RAS, low-ranking models, is that you can actually adapt many of them for the same fine-tune. So you have one big fine-tune, and then you add LoRa's onto it, which can range from 5 megabytes to 400 megabytes. And many of these LoRa's actually try and create a certain style, like a very specific style, or a very specific element, be it an item or a special face, or certain elements, or even just a certain lighting, you know? So in this case, we had like a LoRa that was specialized on recreating authentic Roman armory. So we had this. This actually looks like a Lorica segmentata. That's very, very cool. And I was very impressed that it actually managed to achieve that. And this photo just does not exist when you try and find online Roman legionary with dark skin. That's impossible to find, but with the help of AI, I was able to achieve that. And if then I decide I want this image, but I want it in the style of like an oil painting, there's another LoRa for that. So I add another LoRa, and again, I get like a picture that is what I wanted, but exactly the type that I want. So just for you guys who have already tried Midjourney and maybe played around with One-Way a little bit, of course, that's an absolute valid approach. So it's great because it's available on any device. You don't have to think about what you're doing, like the technical component is completely done for you. You have instant results, which is also great. But the reason we use Stable Diffusion is because you have thousands of different models and LoRa. So you can actually create to the perfect control that you want. And you have the control nets, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Obviously, there's zero censorship. Everything happens on your computer. And obviously, it was invented in Munich, which is a big pro. Currently online, there's a community in that is becoming larger and larger by the day. And one of the most important websites for this community is actually Civitai. It's a website that managed to become the central source not only for downloading fine-tunes and LoRa's, but also recently for sharing AI-generated images, including competitions, rankings. They even have like an internal currency and the options to use that currency to access GPU for training your own LoRa's or creating content online with external GPU power. All in all, pretty genius, I think. And the community on this website is one of the driving forces behind generative AI development. They're literally holding up the flag for open source access to everything and fighting censorship and restrictions aggressively. And the reason for that is also clear. It's not a secret that among the main goals of the community is the creation of the most depraved pornography mankind has ever seen, which Civitai has trouble containing, but it was the same though with other technological areas as well. So pornography was a driver in the adoption of the development of the internet. including all sorts of video on demand technology that we now use to stream the Great British Bake Off, or at least some of those do. Yeah. Another important website is Hugging Face, and it's an online platform that provides tools and resources for natural language processing and machine learning. It has the Transformers library, and it also hosts like a model hub where users can share, discover, and use thousands of pre-trained models. And the amazing thing about Hugging Face is actually that it rivals the big corporations, because here there's literally thousands and thousands of extremely highly skilled people that collaborate on topics that would be extremely expensive to pay for. But in the end, these guys are just working for free, and just because they have fun doing it and they're good at it. And a lot of the stuff that we're working with in the open source community right now has actually been invented by some dude who just wanted to try out if it actually works. And that's really, really fascinating. So we talked about like the quality and the control and the difficulty to combine that. And you probably realized with just text alone, it's absolutely impossible to get the results that you want. So the solution came in the form of specifically trained checkpoints that analyze images with the help of AI, so-called control nets. So you have, for example, Kenny, that analyzes the outlines of a picture, and these outlines then can be filled with whatever you want. So this is how we achieved that shot in the trailer where you can see like she's just switching from the bad guy to herself. Another would be depth. It analyzes the depth of an image so accurately then when it was released. Like, I think there was a startup that until then was kind of considered like the creators of the best depth analyzation software. And when this came out, they just closed down and said, okay, guys, sorry, there's a better website, go use Stable Diffusion. It's actually crazy how well this works. And this is even an older version. There's more versions, newer versions coming up by the week. I haven't actually been able to update it. Another very important tool for us is OpenPose. This is my good friend Albert, who was just there to rescue me a minute ago. We often try use OpenPose to get the exact position that we're looking for. So it analyzes a picture that, for example, we take with our iPhone or that we find online, and we can use it as a reference to create something with Stable Diffusion. And this is really helpful when we want to have control over what's being shown. And if you have a creative vision in mind, you can even draw something, and Stable Diffusion will try and take that data and create something with it. Could be this, or it could be this. Then it depends on your prompt. But in the end, it's really, really cool that you can make your vision happen online. And if you know what you're doing and understand how it works, the possibilities are literally endless. From action to calm to underwater to fairy world. Yeah, there's literally anything possible. So where's all the prompting? You might be wondering, I haven't really spoken about the prompts at all. This was all ControlNet and the Comfy UI. We're trying to get now just briefly into how a Comfy UI workflow looks, for example. And this is, for example, how you would start. You would actually try and prompt something that you want to achieve. In this case, female old Western cowboy riding a horse. You could also prompt cowgirl, but it would probably by itself in the end make cowboy out of it, just because the prompt is very much connected to certain imagery. So you type that in and you combine that, for example, with an image of my friend Albert, who is here riding his office chair. And I will analyze that in 3 of the control nets that we just been showing. So OpenPose, Kenny on the top, and the depth on the bottom. In this case, we only use the OpenPose because we don't want to have that office background in the actual final result. What we want is just the actual OpenPose reference that we're going to use then to create a picture of an actual female cowboy or a cowgirl that is riding a horse. And oftentimes it is not so great, the face in the first creation. That's why we have, for example, inputs that analyze, okay, where's the face? Just take the face by itself and re-render that with a higher resolution just to create the best possible face. And the same with the hands. You know that in the beginning, AI was famously bad with creating hands. We kind of fixed that now just because AI is able to analyze where hands are and specifically replace these areas with realistically looking hands. And there you have it. That's a basic workflow for creating a picture of a woman on a horse. And this is basically one picture now. And that, of course, works also 24 times per second. So this is what we're currently doing. We're using that data and try and make something out of it. This is, for example, one thing that my friend and colleague Sepp created. So he was using not only the data that we just saw, like the data from a video, he was actually instead using 3D data that he created himself in, I think it was Blender or something like that. It was Maya, Blender, something. And he used the 3D input and saved the rendering process by just using it as a base for 3D. And this is how it looks. I think that's pretty cool. So it actually, this is not rendered per se. This is literally the AI analyzing what's there in the actual image and giving it, depending on the prompt, the colors, the lighting, and also the content of what you see. It's not perfect. The closer you look, the more difficult it will be, and there's always some like you always have to work to improve it in the end. But generally, I think it's actually really cool. One small thing that I haven't talked about right now is that, of course, with help of these control nets, we can also very quickly create landscapes that, in the combination with virtual production stage, are also really, really handy. So instead of having to model a certain area with Unreal 5, which is currently the standard for virtual production stages, we can also just quickly create images with Stable Diffusion, create depth maps from them, and from the depth map create, for example, in Blender, 3D assets that we can then project onto the LCD screens. So yeah, that's another way to use all that stuff. So if you want to try all this out, the tools, the Stable Diffusion tools, for example, if you don't want to invest in a high-end GPU and want to install all that stuff, you can actually try it out on Run Diffusion. None of these links are sponsored, so you can just go there and try it out, make a free account. Krea AI, I also highly recommend. And this is actually lets you paint. If we have time, maybe I'll show it to you. But if you want to try it out, Krea is really, really cool as well, and a lot of fun, especially for beginners. Civitai.com I also have talked about. Now the question is, how much time do we still have? I kind of lost track of the time.
Hey, Tobias, we're kind of at time right now, actually.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah, so I think people are going to be popping off, but I would say if anybody has any questions or anything like that, send it to me. And then, Tobias, some of the things that we do is we actually also do workshops sometimes with speakers. So if there's a lot of interest in a workshop, we could certainly do that as well. But this is like super, super interesting stuff. I mean, I think this is, I love seeing the workflows. I love seeing the tools you guys are using.
Okay, then let's just let me wrap it up, and then we go into the Q&A, okay?
Oh, I think we kind of ran through at the time of the Q&A, so we can schedule that later.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm really sorry. Okay.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's great. I mean, I think people got a ton out of this.
Okay. Then thank you so much for inviting me. It was a real pleasure. I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties in between. It was kind of like maybe Zoom is the better option. I don't know. It could have also been interesting.
No, Tobias, it was great. I think people got a ton out of this, and we'll be in touch. And if there's any questions, I'll float them over to you, and we can keep the conversation going.
Okay, then
All
again,
right,
thank you so much, and yeah, take care, everybody.
All right, thanks, Tobias. Appreciate it. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.